Sandy Parker, and welcome to Crafting for Almost Everyone. Today we're going to go over how you do measurements on a ruler, on your scoreboard, and on your paper trimmer, and I hope you'll stay tuned. So I hope that this is really zoomed in. I tried to make it as close as possible so you could really see this. This is the best ruler I could come up with that you could see the numbers on, and I made a mark there at the 1 inch mark. The thing you have to understand when you're doing measurements is that a ruler has a number of dashes between the, we'll call it 0 inches and 1 inch. And you want to count every one of these little dashes, and that tells you how your ruler is set up. It might be set up in 8ths or 16ths. In this case, if you count them, and I'm going to count them quickly with you, you don't count the big dash, the very first one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So my ruler is in 16ths. So that means that in order to get 1/4 of an inch, you need 4 equals 1/4 of an inch. If you want to do 1/2 of an inch, then that would be 8. And if you want to do 3/4, that would be 12. And the way you figure that out on rulers, there'll be bigger dashes. In this case, it has a little bit bigger dashes for the 8ths. So every 2, there's a little bit bigger dash. But then when there's 1/4 inch, I'm going to go over a little bit. Let's go between the 3 and 4. If you can see the dashes that are at the 1/4 inch, that's the 4th one in. See how it's a little bit longer than the ones before it? When you get to the 1/2 inch, which is 8, it's even longer. See that one? It's really long. Then when you get to 3/4, it's a little bit long, but not as long as the 1/2 inch. The ruler makers came up with this so that you could easily get to your, look at your ruler and understand where things are and the placement of, of your dashes so that you could follow it. Most rulers also have centimeters or millimeters, and this one says millimeters and centimeters right there, if you can see that. Okay, so with that being said, when people talk about rulers, they'll talk about things like 5/8. And what you have to remember is if somebody says that that you're going to make a cut at 5/8, when you have a ruler that's in 16ths, that means the 8 has to be doubled, because 8 times 2 is 16. So in order to get the 16th, you would take 5 times 2, and that would be 10. So 10/16 is 5/8. So if you take your ruler and you count 10/16, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, that right there is 5/8. It's 2 notches past the 1/2 inch, which would be 4/8. So the thing you have to remember when you're looking at a ruler is that if you know that it's in 16ths like this one is, then everything in it has to be counted out in 16ths. So if you want it to be in 8ths, then you're going to do like I did. You're going to have to take, if somebody says you need 5/8 on a ruler that has 16th, you have to multiply it by 2. I hope that made sense. That is, in a nutshell, how you use a ruler. So let's go on and look at a scoreboard. Before I go on to my scoreboard, I wanted to tell you one more thing about a ruler that I forgot to mention before, and that is every other mark on a ruler is longer. So when you're talking 16ths, you'd say the first one, then the second one, that's 1/8. and then you skip a line. This one's a little bit longer, and if you can see, it's even a little bit longer than the first long dash, and that means it's a quarter of an inch, or 2/8. Then little mark, and another one, that's 3/8, and then the little mark, and then this one, it's even longer, that is a 1/2 of an inch. So they kind of make a ruler help you in ways like this, where they give you these dashes that are a little bit longer so that you can tell that they are in fact important. And by important I mean 1/8, 1/4, 3/8, a 1/2, 5/8, 3/4, 7/8, and then 5 inches. Hopefully that helps you even more, because I like to make sure I give you like the tricks that a ruler has on it. So let's now go to our score tool. My score tool is from Martha Stewart, and it's no longer made or sold, but you can usually find it on eBay if you look hard enough. It was also a cutting tool, so it was a twofer, and I'm not sure why they don't sell it anymore, but they don't. And I'm going to show you this from the 2-inch mark. My score tool is in 8ths, so you can see that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and that makes it so that it's in 1/8 of an inch. So when you look at something that's an 1/8 of an inch, mine doesn't have different lengths like the ruler did, but it does have different colors. The black lines are of importance. So you skip, remember you don't count your 2, but you do count each of these. So this is 1/8, this is 2/8, and when you do math, 2/8, if you can divide this into this, then you can make it smaller. So 2 goes into 8, it's 1/4. Then you'll skip the blue line. This is 4/8, and 4/8, if you divide this into this, it's actually 1/2. Then you skip the 5, and then 6/8. 6 goes into 8, that's 3/4, and then that's 7/8. So the way it works is it's 1/8, then the next line is 2/8, which 2 goes into 8 is 1/4, 3/8, 4/8, oh, I'm in the wrong spot, 3/8, 4/8, 4 goes into 8 is 1/2, then 5/8, 6/8, 6 goes into 8, 3/4, and then 7/8, and then you go to your 3 inches. The easiest way I know of doing this is exactly like I just did it, to remember. But if it doesn't, you can always just count your dashes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and remembering that the black lines are the more important on mine, meaning that they are 1/4, a 1/2, and 3/4. Now on mine, the quarters, the 1/4 and 3/4, have a black line with a dot, and then the 1/2 mark is a solid line. They like I said, they try to make these so that they can help you with these things, but I'm not really sure if that makes it any easier or not. But that's how I would work with something that's in 8ths. This might not be focusing yet because everything that I'm doing is white. So I'm going to put my hand here, and hopefully that'll make it focus. So when you're looking at my cutting tool, you're going to have to do the same thing. You're going to count from an inch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So that is in 16ths. And 16ths are a little bit more confusing than when it's an eighth, because when you're working in 16ths, you have to make sure that you understand that there are three numbers that are really important, and that would be the 4, the 8, and the 12, because when you look at this, if you see the 4 right there, then this is the 8, and then this is 12, and I mean that would be 4 dashes, 8 dashes, 12 dashes. What that means is, if you count the first 4, that is 1/4. When you count another 4, that's 2/4 or a half. And if you count another one, that's 3/4. And that is the easiest way, I think, to work in 16ths. The tricky part is when you say, well, I want to do it in 5/8 or 3/8. Okay, so if somebody says they want to do 3/8 or 5/8, I'll just give you these two numbers. What you need to do to get to 16s, in order to get to 16 with an 8, you have to multiply that by 2. So what you're going to do is you're going to multiply both numbers by 2. So 3 times 2 is 6, and 8 times 2 is 16ths. 5 times 2 is 10. 8 times 2 is 16. So that means you're going to go to the 6th dash for 3/8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 right there. And for 5/8, you're going to go to 10/16. You're going to get, don't count the first one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 right there. And that's how you do odd numbers that you might, that are common. These numbers are very common to use. 8, 4, 1/4, half. Those are all very common numbers. And normally people don't say something like, I want it to be 8/16, because people just normally say 1/2. So you're going to have to be able to, what I would do is I would get really comfortable with counting your dashes and understanding that that when you're talking 16ths, you want to count the dashes and understand that 4 equals 1/4, 8 equals 1/2, and 12 equals 3/4. That'll make it a lot easier for you to use your cutting tool if it has 16ths on it. If it has 8ths, then go back to what I showed you with my scoreboard, because that's the easiest way to count 8ths. Hopefully this was of a benefit to you. I don't know any other way to explain it, and if you have a better way of explaining it, maybe you could write it in the comments below. I always love it when my viewers help me with things like this. And for those of you who are new to crafting and new to figuring out numbers on your scoreboard or your paper trimmer, this is probably the easiest way to do it. You could always use these as a cheat sheet. You could write these things down so that you know that 3/8 is 6/16 and 5/8 is 10/16, things like that. And then again, don't count the very first dash where it says 2 and there's a little dash. Don't count that very first one. That one is not in the 16 numbers that you're counting. So I hope that this gives you a little bit of help and that you give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Tell your friends about me on social media, because I love that. And thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.